Christy, it's great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, and thank you for all of your work. You are a prolific writer and healer, and you've been in the world doing wonderful things for a long time. And so I'm excited to introduce you to my followers and fans and listeners, and also just continue to share the abundance that you put out into the world. So I thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, so as I already said, Christy is a New York Times bestselling author, not just once, but twice, correct?
Yes, 2 times.
So it was You Can Have It All, and what other book was the top seller?
Yeah, so it was The Art of Having It All and Taming Your Alpha Bitch.
Taming Your Alpha Bitch. I
Yeah.
love the title of that.
I know. And the people either like it or they hate it.
Yeah,
And then
right.
my other book, Quantum Success, is an international bestseller as well. So
Okay, and so you have a new book coming out, The Desire Factor, which is also about creating, manifesting, and getting into the flow of what we really want in our life.
yes,
And
absolutely.
what prompted you? What was the need that you saw for this book to follow up your other books?
Well, it's interesting. None of my books, I don't go to write a book. All of my books, since the day I became an author 20 years ago, all of my books download through me. And so even when I had my first book that was co-authored called, Taming Your Alpha Bitch, I had my literary agent and publishers going, "What's your next book?" And I'm like, "I don't know. It doesn't reveal itself until it reveals itself." So the desire factor really was something that had been revealing itself over a period of several years. And it started out as a purse book, because for me, I love fashion, and some of my biggest carrots that have been out there, the things that I do when I reward myself, have been high-end fashion purses. And I share in the desire factor how, my desire for these purses led me to be who I am. It sounds funny, right? But for someone, they could desire a purse, or somebody else could desire a partner, or someone else could desire moving to a different location. It doesn't matter what our desires are, it's who we become in the process of attaining those desires. So the thing I share in the desire factor, and one of these moments that really made me realize this, is that for years, and this is 27 years ago, I wanted to have a Coach purse, right? And I had never had a Coach purse, and I was a smoker at the time.
Uh-huh.
And for me, it was like I really wanted to go buy myself a Coach purse, but I said to myself, as a reward for quitting smoking, because quitting smoking was very difficult for me at the time, I said, when I quit smoking and I become a non-smoker, then I'm going to reward myself with that purse.
Right.
And I imagined who I needed to be and who I needed to become and what I needed to focus on in order to have that purse. So I became a person that would be wearing that purse, which was a very different image of myself as a smoker.
Yes. And it's also a very different vibration. And that's what I really love about your work, and I resonate with it as well as my work. But I read that in your book about the story about the purse. And, one could say, well, that's a material object. And yes, it's fine. It's great to have like a goal, and even if it's a material goal or whatever. But it truly is these markers that we establish for ourselves that help us guide us to who we can become and who we really want to be, And so I
Yes.
love that story.
Thank you. And you mentioned something that's really interesting, because the subject line, or the subtitle is "How to Embrace Your Materialistic Nature to Reclaim Your Full Spiritual Power." And why I chose that is because some people think, well, I have this desire, but that's so materialistic. Or, oh, is that okay to want that desire, right? To have a bigger home, to drive a better car, to have more money in a business, or whatever it may be. And a lot of times, whether it's our own self-judgment or our own, kind of like, well, I shouldn't want that, we talk ourselves out of our desires because we're like, oh, that's so shallow, or that's too materialistic.
Right.
But the desire factor, it's really a book of how to really follow the 7 universal principles to be able to attain. And it's like a combination lock, right? It's like if you get the numbers out of order, out of sequence with a combination lock, it doesn't open up the lock. And a lot of times these principles, people use them in different steps, but they're not opening it up. Like they're not really moving you in the direction of your desires. So people are left feeling frustrated. Like, why do some people manifest their desires so easily, and why am I struggling?
Yes.
Well, this could be the missing piece for people, but to understand that all of our desires come from a higher perspective. Like when we receive an idea, it wasn't the human being that received the idea. I mean, or came up with the idea. We received it from a higher place. And that idea then turns into a desire. We go, ooh, I love that. Right. And
Yeah,
it's flowing with that, ooh, I love that.
right. And
It's
it
that energy
gets
of
into a
being,
higher place. Yeah.
yeah, it's expansive, it's life-giving, right? But the moment we talk ourselves out of it,
Yeah.
or what happens, right? You get so excited, oh, that's it. I'm going to quit my corporate job. I'm going to start my own business, or I'm going to move to the other side of the country, or I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And we call our friend or we call our mom and we tell them, oh, this is what I'm so excited about. I'm going to sell my house and move here. And then the voice, because they care about us, right? They're like, "Oh my God, aren't you too old to do that? Or are you sure? What if you fail?" Or, all those doubts come in,
Yeah.
which clouds our own desires.
Yes. And then we get stuck in the programmed limited beliefs that we've had that keeps us small and keeps us less than. And I talk a lot about it in a different way, but I think we're speaking the same language. And that's what's beautiful about all of this work for, healers and people who are putting the light out. But when I'm thinking about it, when I was reading your book, one of the first questions that came to my mind that I wanted to ask, and this is a heavier question, but I just want to go ahead and put it out there because I work with a lot of people that come from a trauma place or come from a really like a pool of lack from their history, from their family lineage, from what have you, and it's very difficult when we have trauma programming or limited beliefs programming or all we've known is a certain way, a
Yeah.
certain life. How would you, well, I know how because I've read the book, but how would you say in this interview to tell someone that it is possible and what steps might be needed to help overcome that limited belief or the trauma brain to get there?
Well, I love this question, and it is a deep question, and I love that you're asking this. But we have to realize that all of what we've been through in our past, and all that we've been imprinted with, and all that we've been conditioned with, all of those are moments of energy impact, energy imprinting, literally decision points. And when those happen inside of our own psyche, inside of our own body, we then start attracting from that particular point. So for example, we're going along and it could be when we were little, right? And we were wanting the attention of someone. Maybe it was our dad. And we were wanting the attention. He was busy doing something. Maybe he was focused on something else. So in that particular snapshot in time, we could say, "Oh, I'm not important. I'm not enough to my dad,
Mhm.
right? He doesn't love me." And so then it becomes a decision of, oh, men don't love me, or men don't pay attention to me.
Right.
That energy, that decision point gets stuck, and that inside of our physical body becomes literally a set point from which we attract from that belief. Well, now we start moving into boyfriends and husbands and things of this nature, and our evidence that we think in our head is that men don't pay attention to me, or men don't love me, or I'm not good enough to have the attention of a man, right? When you go in and literally release that belief and go back to that moment when you made that decision and release it as energy and bring in a new empowered energy, everything is energy. When
Yes.
you transmute that old energy, now you've released that imprint, and now the reality shifts.
Yes, I love that. And I love in your book, so you not only just in this book, but in your other work, I know that you provide people with kind of a system or principles, if you will, of how to actually take steps toward shifting, and what those principles are. And one of the main principles that you talk about is starting from the place of sufficiency.
Yes.
And I want you to just tell briefly what your definition of sufficiency is and how you use this in your work of manifesting and changing your life.
Love it. So yeah, for 25 years, this has been the deep work that I've done for myself. And then the last 20 years done with clients, because like you've been saying, it's like so many people are imprinted with lack and limitation. And if you look at it like a spectrum, just a spectrum of energy, on one side of the spectrum, you have lack and limitation, separateness, not enoughness, insufficiency. And that always feels bad.
Yes.
right? That's where all of the lower level emotions come from. The lack or the fear, the worries, the doubt, the frustration, the anger, all of that comes from perspective of lack. Well, on the other side of the spectrum, you have abundance, right? That's where all the higher emotions are. And this is where we feel good. So, my Cliff Note version of this is if you're feeling bad, you're in lack. If you feel good, you're in abundance. Well, it's a big jump from lack to abundance. So, in the middle is this space where it's the tipping point to go from lack to abundance. And that's sufficiency. It's called the law of sufficiency and abundance.
Mm.
So it's finding the place, no matter what you're perceiving as not enough, no matter what you're having a negative emotion or a negative perspective or a lack perspective on, when you can move into a moment of looking at this moment right here, right now is enough. It's sufficient. I have, and then you start looking for the positive aspects about what you do have, right? And I have people challenge me all the time. Well, what if I don't have any money?
Right.
So, right? Well, if you say don't have any money, literally have $5 in your checking account, but you live in an apartment or you live in a condo or you're living in a house, you still have four walls that protect you. You have a car that you can drive. You have, air conditioning in the summer or, whatever it is. You've paid for the things that give you sufficiency in your life. You have a bed to lay your head on at night. You have a computer. Obviously, if you didn't have a computer or a phone, you wouldn't be listening to this right now.
Right.
Right? So there's things that you can, and we get into this negative perspective and it's like, oh my God, that's what it is. But we need to take a step back and look at, okay, in this moment, what can I find that's right and good? What can I find that's enough, sufficient enough that I can look for the positive aspects of my life? Because that energy alone shifts our perspective and
Mhm.
then brings us into more of a feeling good. And then once we start looking for things to appreciate and what's actually going right and good in our lives, then we can get into a different frequency and a different momentum and now start looking at different things. And that's when the universe starts bringing us more to appreciate and be grateful for.
Yeah, I love that. I talk a lot about acceptance, and when I hear you speak about sufficiency, I feel like it's a very deep form of acceptance. Instead of
Yes.
just focusing on everything that's wrong, getting into acceptance of what is and allowing that, as you say, to help us recognize how much we do have. And at that point, you just said we're already halfway there. We're already halfway to abundance, right?
I'm a law of attraction expert. I've been practicing coaching on law of attraction for 20 years, processing it myself for, consciously aware of it for 25 years. And I've actually certified over 3,000 law of attraction coaches through the Quantum Success Coaching Academy. Yeah.
So The Secret was a phenomenal success, and everyone, including me, we had the book, and then there was the movie, and everyone was kind of on board. For some people that struggle with the programming and the imprint of the negative, and I think also just that it's really easy to just pick an object, but to me, it's more an experiential or feeling way of working with energy at large and creating our life at large so that we're vibrating at a level that attracts multiple things. But I remember reading a lot of people's excitement about The Secret and law of attraction, and then confusion, and then disappointment when you know
Yeah.
oh, this can't happen, I can't have a Porsche tomorrow. And so I think it's important that we speak really clearly about the process of it. And again, that's why I love your principles in the desire factor, because they're practical, and they're things that we need to incorporate always in our life. But they are really effective. It's not just like doing this so that you have this. It's like not having a diet so you lose 20 pounds. It's changing your lifestyle and changing your vibration and changing your energy, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So it's interesting because when I was coaching on law of attraction, I would have to educate people on what law of attraction was. When
Mhm.
The Secret came out, I no longer had to educate people on law of attraction because of the fact that they knew about The Secret, read the book, watched it, right? But what I found, like you, is that more hope grew within a lot of people. It was a huge birthing for a lot of people.
Right.
There was a lot of hope that came. But then to understand that there's only so much you can put in a book, there's only so much you can put in a movie. And that was an opening. It was kind of like, okay, everybody, here's kindergarten information on
Right.
universal laws. Here's kindergarten information on energy.
Yeah.
And those that kind of took a step in and went, okay, I'm meditating or I'm visualizing the $1,000,000. Where is it? Oh, I can't have $1,000,000. They're like, this doesn't work.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And then there's others that woke up and went, wow, I didn't know, I want to learn more. What, because at that time, I was teaching people that it's not just about law of attraction. There's other universal laws. As a matter of fact, the law that we talked about, the law of sufficiency and abundance, is far more important for us as humans to know, to learn, and to apply,
Mhm.
because that's where we're shifting. We're going, okay, I'm in lack right now. I need to shift into sufficiency. When I'm doing that deliberate, shift into sufficiency, now it affects how law of attraction, because law of attraction is just literally giving us more of what we're sending out. But what people don't understand, and this is where my work comes in, is that we have to learn how to master our own energy, because that's what it's all about. We're physical, yes, of course, but we're also energy beings.
Mhm.
And we are constantly in receiving mode. Our cells have receptor sites that they need to receive in energy. Most people don't deliberately choose and bring in the energy that they want to feel and experience. They'll go out into their world at their grocery store and they get inundated by fear from other people or worry. And there's this whole thing about empaths, and it's like empaths feel that they got to close down and really disassociate themselves with the world because they're so sensitive. It's like, that's not the answer.
No.
When you can fill yourself up with your own energy of your choosing, now you're an influence in the world. You're filled up instead of being so depleted that you're now taking on everybody else's energy.
Right. It's so true. I talk about that all the time. I'm so glad to hear you say that.
Yeah, so
Truly,
that's
because it's
that's
another form of lack, honestly. It's
yes.
like I'm avoiding myself to feel everything out here, and now I'm disempowered, and everyone has everything from me, and now I'm a victim, and I don't have enough. It's
Yes.
that same kind of negative vibration, and we all
Yes.
get stuck in it. I mean, I've been there too. So
Hey, we've all been trained in lack and limitation. We
yeah,
have. If we're
yeah,
physical beings living in this physical world, which we are, we wouldn't be listening to this. All of us. I mean, I came from when I talk to my parents who are in their 80s, I have to like literally disassociate myself and think, okay, how do I take this from an abundant perspective? Because they're so mired in lack. And that's how I was raised.
I
That's
know.
when I came into this world of going on my conscious spiritual path, because we're always on a spiritual path, just like everything that's a desire is not only material, it's also spiritual. Everything here, everything's energy. So everything's there spiritual. When I was there, it was like I was in so much lack and limitation that no matter what I did, no matter what I accomplished, no matter how much money I weighed, no matter how small my butt was, no matter whatever it was never going to be enough, because
Yeah,
that's where my perspective was.
I'm not enough, and I don't have enough. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm not thin enough, I'm not tall enough, I'm not this enough, I'm not attractive enough, I'm not smart enough. I mean, we have so many not enoughnesses, that when we shift that and we start thinking like the divine that's breathing us, we all each have our life, right? Which is our divine self that's literally beating our hearts. None of us has to do that.
right.
None of, without even taking a deep breath in or realizing that we're breathing. Most of us do that all day, every day. We're breathing,
Right.
and it's not us that's deliberately doing that. It's our life.
Yeah. And that life
And
force.
yeah, and that life force, it
Yeah.
loves and adores us,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So when we can and understand that that divine that's always with us, that can't be separated or we wouldn't be alive, is our source of energy, and that everything is energy first before it follows form, before it goes into and becomes some type of form, we can connect with the energy of our choosing. So we're energy receivers. We're also energy containers. A lot of people bring the energy in and then they send it right out. They give away more than they can, right? It's
Right.
like if we allow it to come in and we allow ourselves to seep in it, we allow ourselves to be contained in that energy. Now, what we're giving out, because it affects our words that we say, our thoughts that we think, our emotions, our perspective, our actions. I mean, when we bring in the energy of our choosing, we let ourselves be a containment of that. Now, what we're sending out as signals, that's what law of attraction is responding to. The
Yes.
Secret couldn't get into that because they were introducing a concept of law of attraction.
I know. And it's like, I hate to say this because it's a terrible phrase, but like most things commercial or mainstream, there's a certain level of, I wanted to say dumbing it down, but that's not the correct version, but simplifying,
Yes.
you have to present it in a package for the masses. And often when that happens, it's the cliff notes or the abbreviation or the introduction or what have you. And then there's a lot more diving to do. Well, I wrote down a quote, or not a quote, but a topic about something I wanted to ask you about. When you said, when we're willing to do our part, then otherwise, if we're not willing to do our part, we're short circuiting the whole system and how we could enhance, amplify, add to the energetic vibration of all things, right?
Yes.
And I love that because I think so many people forget that it's not just about us. We're here as part of a whole, and there is a system and there is connectivity. And so many people that have the wounds, and I have compassion for that, but also learning to love ourselves and learning that we are enough. And not only that, but it's not selfish. In fact, as you said in the book, we short circuit how the system could go if we don't show up and if we're not willing to do our part. So
Yes.
thank you for saying that. If you want to elaborate on it more, go ahead, please.
It's yes. And thank you for bringing that up. It's, there's so many people that let their wounds define them and they don't show up in the fullness of who they are. Right. And even just that phrase, right? I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, when I was in the fullness of who I am, when I was full of myself,
Yes.
that's considered to be bad. Right? That don't be so selfish. Don't be boastful. Don't be so full of yourself is even a negative expression. Don't be so full of yourself.
Right.
Well, I mean, being full of ourself, not from an, ego, I'm so great thing, but the fullness of life and what we're connected to and what's breathing us when we're showing up 100% in our love body instead of our pain body. Now we are affecting the light that's turned on within us affects everybody else. And it's like Marianne Williamson's quote, that she wrote in A Return to Love. When we give ourselves permission to shine, that gives everybody else permission to shine. Yeah. Right? It's like when we are in our fullness, others see us and they're attracted to that light and it turns them on. It's like lights just affecting each other. Yeah. But when we're shrinking, it's like if we are one cell in the body of the divine, right? If we're functioning on all cylinders, we're now affecting all the other cells around us, right? It's like in the body, you have a cancer cell that goes awry. We all know what happens, right? Well, the opposite is true. You have a cell that lights up in fullness and richness and well-being. Well, it's going to have an effect on all the other cells around it. Mm-hmm. And that's the part we play as a collective, because even though it looks like we're separate, and we are from a physical perspective, that separate consciousness is what gets us in trouble and has us fighting against and has us competing and comparing. But when we understand that I'm connected to my own divine source, you're not taking anything from me, I'm not taking anything from you, right? We all have our own treasure chest above our heads that's constantly filled up. It's called energy. And it's us that co-creates with this divine. And we, because we're physical, we take the physical action with the fullness of the alignment, giving our fullness and our best to what we're creating. Now we're showing up.
Right. And right? So many people that don't practice that, they are full of other stuff, and I love that phrase, don't be full of yourself. I heard that too a lot growing up, and I think a lot of people did. And it's kind of like, well, who am I supposed to be full of? Am I supposed to not exist and be full of you and spend all of my energy about you? And then yeah. And now that we start forming these codependent relationships, I talk about codependency a lot because it's those stringy, sticky, energetic ties that we deposit everywhere. And then people go, I'm exhausted. Yeah. Well, no wonder you're exhausted. Half of you isn't even here. half of you is
Exactly.
somewhere else, you know? And so
Yeah.
I love that idea of being full of yourself and that we have a constant supply of energy, of love, of desires, you know,
Yes.
a constant supply of desires. What do you desire? And how can we live that without feeling selfish, guilty, uh, bad about ourselves or anything, you know?
Yeah.
Well, so your book comes out in April, correct, of this year, 2021?
Yes,
Yes.
and you can actually pre-order it now at thedesirefactor.com because I've got processes and everything like so that you can start digging into this information now, so you
Oh,
don't have to
good.
wait until April. Yeah, and also when you get a copy, you get 4 sessions with myself and the counsel, who I channel, and there are 4 live sessions that take us through each and every principle in the book when the book comes out. So there's a lot of good stuff that you get for a $15 book.
That's awesome. I had no
Yeah.
idea about that. And the book is so beautiful too. I love the swirl and the
Isn't that
movement
pretty?
around it. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really great. Yeah.
Thank you. It represents the energy, and I don't know if you felt it since you're so sensitive to
Yeah.
energy. Like every word, everything in there is so infused with the energy. So just even having it and reading it, you just feel uplifted by reading it. That's what I
Yeah.
love about it.
Yeah, it's nice. It draws you into it. So
Yeah.
what are your plans after? I know you're going to be busy with the book and marketing the book and you've got your clients and so forth. Are you working on anything new yet?
This is, I'm always got stuff. I'm working on a couple of projects with a couple of different companies where I'm doing programs with them. My family, my mom and dad are in their 80s. And so they're at a place where they're not wanting to have a home anymore. They want to, they don't want to go in a retirement home. So now we're in a creation mode of a house where they can have a guest house and be on our property. So even just not just in business,
Yeah.
but in personal life, I'm always working on something. I still have a 10 and 11-year-old little boys that are very much into soccer. And so it's really about balancing, where I put my attention, my energy. And so
That's
lots going on.
okay. Yeah. That's a full plate, but that's the way you like it,
I do.
obviously, and what you wanted in your life. So
Yeah.
congratulations for
Thank you.
successfully manifesting and having a life that you love.
Thank you.
That's what's most.
Yes, it was deliberate for sure. And it's fun to do that deliberately in all aspects, not just to have one aspect of career firing on all cylinders, but having all of it. That's what I wrote about in The Art of Having It All, for each person to look at each aspect of your life and ask yourself, what do you desire? Because some people go, oh, I don't want anything. I don't
Right.
desire
I don't
anything.
need anything.
And you know what? That's just, I'm sorry, but that's just a way of shrinking yourself, because a lot of people do that. I'm sure you find this too with your clients, is that if someone says they don't want anything or don't desire anything, it's because they don't allow themselves to, because they don't want to be disappointed.
Yes, I know. It's sad, but we
Yeah.
are hopefully teaching them and guiding them along the way and keep practicing it ourselves. I'm sorry I mistitled the book, but in my head, when I think of that book, I always just go straight to you can have it all. That's what I call it. But it is the art of having it all.
I love it. I like it. It's a good book title. You can have it all. It's
You can
true.
have it all. Yeah. It's kind
Yeah.
of Louise Hay-ish in a way or something, how she would write. Well, thank you for being here so much. And
Thank
I
you
will
so much.
support your work. Yep. And keep an eye out on what you're doing and all the exciting things. Invest to your family. I know through this, not just through COVID, but I think the whole circumstances of what's happening in our world right now, it's helping all of us shift and refocus and expand, even though we feel very limited in certain ways of things we can't do. There's definitely an internal expansion going on that is including more of what's important. And so best of
Absolutely.
luck for you on that. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Christy. And you can find her book on her website, desirefactor.com, or Amazon and all of the other sales channels, correct?
Absolutely. So it's thedesirefactor.com.
Thedesirefactor.com.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks so much.